Hi there, I'm Christine, the Gemini Stitcher, and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're an existing subscriber, thanks so much for sticking with me, and if you're new, welcome to the crazy sewing gang. So this vlog is going to be all about my dress that I'm making for the gathering. The gathering is a event that takes place in Yorkshire every year, and we all make a garment and go and share our love for sewing at an evening event. And this year it's on the 27th of April, which is very soon. Now I've chosen a Vogue dress to make, and I thought we could do a little sew along, well, more hints and tips than sew along. Now, this is the pattern that I'm going to make. Hopefully you can see it. So they do a version that's just below the knee and then one that's 3/4 length. Let's talk about this pattern because I'm in love with it. It's got, let's put the line drawings. Actually, I'll put the line drawings up and then you can see. It's got grown-up back wing sleeves, which are really fluttery, and floaty. And pleats, so it's quite forgiving. It's got pleats in the top, front and back, so it's quite forgiving in the boob area. It's not too clingy. And then it floats out into an A-line pleated skirt. What's not to like? So, I've not made a Vogue pattern for quite some considerable time. So I decided that I was going to make a toile. So the size banding on this pattern is from extra small up to XXL. So from a UK 4 to 6 up to a 24 to 26. Not too bad for being inclusive. Could be better though. So I looked at the body measurements, not the sizes, and it told me to make a size medium, which is a size 12 to 14, which I thought made sense to me. So that's what I did with my toile. But I will show you the dress. Here it is. This is my toile version. I've made it in a pink and white flowered fabric that I got from Beck, from What Beck Sews D-Stash. I'm loving the fluttery sleeves. Now, the neckline, you'll notice, isn't round near my navel like it is on the pattern. So I did it as the pattern to see where it would land. Extremely low down. So I altered it and I've raised it by nearly 4 inches. So this was the toile, so I know when I'm making my real gathering dress how much I need to stitch up this centre panel before I add the facing. I made up the short version because my body measurements will start popping up here and they'll stay throughout the whole of this sew. So you can use it as guidance. Yeah, I'm 5 foot on a good day. So I chose to do the shorter version and added about 2 inches on the bottom because to shorten the longer one, it just wasn't working. It would be too wide at the bottom for me and swamp me. So I chose the shorter version. Really pleased with how it's turned out. Now, the fabric dilemma. Just put this down. According to the pattern instructions, let's put the specs on when I can see. According to these pattern instructions, for a size medium with 150 wide fabric, I would need 3.1 meters. Now, the fabric I had, the pink fabric, was 140 wide. and I only had 3 meters of it. So it was interesting. I had to do a bit of Tetris, I'll be honest, and graded in the seams at the bottom on some of the skirt panels, but I managed to squeeze it out of 3 meters. There was quite a bit of wastage because of the way the skirt pieces have to be laid out, and it was a one-way design. If you were doing it in a plain fabric, you would definitely get it out of less than 3 meters because you could turn the skirt pieces round and get more onto your fabric width, if you know what I mean. I couldn't do that. So then I had to find some fabric, and I searched high and low. Round and round in circles and down rabbit holes I went because I wanted the perfect fabric. Crazy, isn't it? But I didn't want to pay the earth for it. And eventually I found some at Guthrie and Garney. Now it's all cut out, so I'll just grab a piece of the garment and then you can see the beautiful fabric. So here it is. How fabulous is that? I'm so in love with it. It's got all my colours in. I love teals and I love pinks. It's also got a bit of red in, and it's on a pale pink background. Absolutely stunning. Now, this is a Nerida Hansen fabric. It's a viscose lawn, so it's lovely and soft and floaty. And I cannot wait to make this up. Take the bins off. So, how we're going to do this? Well, I've watched vlogs where they've done real true sew-alongs where you actually sit and watch the person sewing and do it with them. That is not my style. So if that's what you're looking for, this isn't it. What this is going to be is me going through the process, doing my sewing and keep bobbing back to you with my hints and tips as I go. Now, I won't be following the pattern instructions I did do last time, and for various reasons I'm doing mine in a different order more than anything else, and hopefully the construction of it will be easier than it was. It's not a hard pattern, it's, I would say, intermediate, and that's only because of the invisible zip. That's the only difficult part in this dress. So if you're at a stage where you're thinking, I need to progress and put a zip in, maybe this is the dress pattern for you. So what's the first thing that we're going to do to the dress? I'm going to work on the front and back bodice pieces. So I'll just grab one of them. And you can see it. This is the back bodice piece. And the front is very similar, except it's got the V out for the neckline. You've got pleat details at the bottom here, the dots to make the pleats, which you join together. And this forms your sleeve as well as your bodice, which is why it's such an unusual shape. So the first thing that I'm going to do is baste the pleats in where the marks are, bring the dots together, baste them down, baste them across the bottom. And then the other thing, which is what it tells you to do on the pattern, but then the next thing that I'm going to do is, you'll see you've got a line on here. Let's just get closer. This line here is where you sew under the arm to create the edge of the sleeve. And then from there up is your sleeve. Now the pattern tells you to do all that first and then start pressing up your little narrow hem for the sleeve, which is, to be honest, a bit fiddly. And I've decided I'm going to mark, obviously, that'll be marked on my pattern so I know where that's going to be. So this, from this side of that line, I'm going to put a little snip about half an inch up, and then from there all the way to the edge I'm going to do my double pressing for my hem, and I'm going to do the same on the front. The reason I'm doing that, I'm not sewing it, the hem, I'm just pressing it. And the reason I'm doing that is so that the guidelines are already there when you sew this together, and it's going to be easier, hopefully, to sew that hem up because they've already been pressed while they're flat individual pieces, and not trying to press them up when they're attached to the front or the back. So we're going to do that, get those pleats in, and get the back wings, sleeves, hem pressed, and then I'll be back. So I've prepared the body backs, and I'm going to do the fronts in the same way, but I just thought I would bob back and explain to you what I have done. Now, a couple of things I've not told you about yet. One of them is called forming tape, and I don't know if you can see. Oh, there we go. There's the forming tape that I have ironed on because it's adhesive tape with a chain stitch sewn through it, and you can use it instead of doing stay stitching. Now, the Vogue pattern that I'm following doesn't mention stay stitching anywhere in it, and I can't believe they're not telling you, reminding you to do it. Why do we stay stitch? A few reasons really. So I've put the forming tape round the neck, back neck, instead of stay stitching, and the reason you do that is because you've got a curve and you cut across the grain. So fabric has warp and weft, can't remember which way they go, so one goes straight down, one goes straight across. This fabric is a woven fabric. There is no stretch in it, but when you cut across the grain you create stretch in the fabric. So to stop that stretching out when you're sewing, you put stay stitching or forming tape. So I've done that round the neckband, and I will be doing it other places as we go through the sew. So stay stitching or forming tape around the back neckband. I've get to the bottom, put the pleats in, tacked them in. They aren't sewn, they're tacked in because all that tacking comes out at the end. So we've got the two pleats in both sides of the backs, and then I've pressed, like I said I was going to do, my hem all the way around my sleeve. So it starts, you cut where your bottom square is on your pattern markings. I've cut into that square just below it, and then use that to do the pressing for my hem. Now the other thing I forgot to tell you that I've done, just trying to find a piece of it where you can see the stitching. Again, because this is cut on the curve, you're creating stretch in the fabric. So stay stitching is a good idea, and it serves a dual purpose with these back wing sleeves. So there is, you can see along there, trust me, there is a row of stay stitching. Now I used the inside of my presser foot as the guide for my edge, so that's where the edge of my fabric was, and I've done a narrow stay stitch all the way up the back wing. And then the other thing that you use it for is it's your guide for pressing your first part of your seam. So you press it over to where the stay stitching is, and then press it again back on itself to create your nice neat hem. Now that's not been sewn until later, but I've prepped it now. I'm going to go and do the same with the fronts, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Here's the fronts. I've done the pleats at the bottom, like the back, turned over and pressed but not sewn round the back wing sleeve. And then I've also put the forming tape down the front V, and I've put a little snip in, which is a lot higher. That's where my finger is where you should sew it to, according to the pattern, if you want to flash all your boobs. And that, where my other finger is where I'm sewing to, so quite a bit higher up, but much more comfortable to wear. And yeah, I've had to alter it. I couldn't wear it the way it was. So that's where we're sewing. So the next thing is I'm going to put the front's right side space in, and I'm going to sew from the bottom to where that clip is, lock the stitches, and then I'm going to overlock the edges. Now, if you carry on now and follow the instructions, it tells you to start attaching your front bodice to your back bodice and finishing your hems on your back wing sleeves, which is absolutely fine. But that makes problems for yourself when you're putting your invisible zip in. So I'm doing a little bit of a switcheroo at this point, and I'm going to completely finish the back bodice and put the zip in. Reason being, it's in the flat, I haven't got the front of the dress getting in the way, and invisible zips can be an absolute pain at the best of times. So I'm doing it in the flat, and if you want to do that, then ignore the instructions for now and follow me. So I've got my back bodice with the pleats in, and I'm going to attach the back bodice to the skirt backs. So to do that, I've got to finish off the skirt waist and the pleats. So I'll be back with them. Hang on. These are the back skirt panels. I've marked the dots. You probably can't see it, but I can, where my zip needs to start, because your zip's going to go past your waist, because that's going to fit snug, and the zip is to help your dress get on. Sorry if I'm stating the obvious. There's two panels to the back. So before I start joining them together, I'm going to do the forming tape trick again. You don't have to do this on your skirt panels, but this is a special occasion dress and I want it to last. So I'm going to put the forming tape round the curve at the top, because see, that's got stretch in it, and also down the side panels, because they're cut on an angle, which then means you're creating stretch in the fabric, and I don't want these seams to stretch or bag out. So I'm going to put forming tape all the way down both side seams on both back panels, and all the way round the waist part as well. Then I'm going to join them together where the zip is going to go. And I'm going to do it, hopefully, an easier way of putting an invisible zip in. You can try it, see if it works for you. So the other thing I'm going to do is also from where the dot is to the top on the bottom of the skirt and all the way up the centre back of the top panel, I will be putting some interface strips to reinforce, but that's when we come to do the zip. For now, what I'm going to do is sew the back together, normal 3mm stitch length until I get to that dot. Then I'm going to back tack, and then from that dot to the top of the back of the skirt, I'm going to do it as a tacking stitch, because that's where the zip's going to go. So we'll do that, and then we're going to sort out the back panel and get them attached together. I'm back again. So this is the top back section, and I've joined it along its centre seam with a tacking stitch all the way down. Before I did that, I overlocked the seams individually so that we can press that seam open for attaching the zip. So that's the top back. And this is the back skirt. So I've put my forming tape down both side seams and along the top section on both back pieces, and then I've overlocked the centre back seam individually so that it can be pressed open for the zip. Then find the dot, there it is. I've done a normal 3mm zip up to the dot, which is where my zip's going to start. Back tacked a few times to reinforce it at that point, and then change to a 5mm tacking stitch all the way to the top of that waistband. So now we're going to attach the skirt part to the bodice part, and then we can start constructing our invisible zip. Something a little bit silly, and I'm going to tell you now so you don't make the same mistake. I've rescued it. I attach the two bottom pieces together at the centre seam, two top pieces together centre seam, then join them together at the waist, which is fine, but it's meant that I've had to be really careful that my centre seams line up, and be really careful when I've overlocked that centre seam, because I've had to leave a gap in the middle where the zip's going to be, otherwise the overlocking would have to all be unpicked. In hindsight, what I should have done, and what I'm suggesting you do, is do the two halves separately. So join the bottom skirt to one half of the top bodice. Do the same with the other one at the waist. Then individually overlock them, and then join them at the centre seam with the tacking stitch from where the zip marking is. Hope that makes sense. Kind of. But I've rescued it. I've had to wiggle, finagle my overlocking so that it doesn't go across the middle. And this is where we're at. We're ready for the dreaded zip. So the method that I use for putting an invisible zip in is the one that I've seen on Sew Essentials. I will pop the link to their full demonstration. But I'll be doing it here, live. Well, recording me doing it, and then you can see, hopefully, that it does actually work. So that's our back, and that is where our zip is going to go. You need an invisible zip that's long enough. So you need an invisible zip that is longer than you need. So you can see, there's my waistline, and the zip goes all the way down to here. And I only need, so I've got about that much, too much zip on the end. And that's important with this method. The zip has to be longer than you need. The first two things we're going to do is press our zip. That's what an invisible zip looks like on the outside. We'll unzip it. And on the inside, you've got your teeth, which fold over to the inside, but we're going to unfold it and press it all the way down both sets of zipper teeth. Now, some people are worried that they will melt the zipper teeth. Never happened to me, and I just literally unfold it, run the iron straight down. I'm going to go and press the zip. And the other thing that I'm going to do is cut some strips of interfacing that are slightly narrower than the width of the seam, and I'm going to put strips of interfacing down either side of the seam all the way to the bottom of the zip. Now that gives your seam a little bit of reinforcement and helps when you're putting your invisible zip in. I've got my interfacing down either side of the seam allowances where the zip's going to go. And now we need to attach our zip to the seam allowances only before we sew, because it's invisible and you're not going to have any stitching on the outside. Now I use this double-sided craft tape. It comes on a strip and you stick it down and then peel the top off and then stick your zip down to it. So I'm going to put a strip down either side of the seam allowances where the zip needs to be, peel the other half off and then line the zip up with the seam, the teeth right on the centre of that seam, stick it in place, and then belt and braces. I'm also then going to use a large, get a hand needle, large tacking stitch only on the seam allowance up either side. Okay, so there's my zip all tacked and double-sided taped in. Now the tacking doesn't go through to the outside. As I've said, it's just on the seam allowances. So now is where the magic starts. We're going to rip open the seam where all the tacking stitches are. I'm going to attach, this is my invisible zipper foot I have for my machine. There's lots of different ones. I find this one works really well. It's a generic one. Got it from the place with an A. If you know, you know. So I'm going to change it over. And on the back of your invisible zipper foot, it has a little trap, and that's where the teeth go. So that, and then a little hole on the top, and your needle goes through that hole. And as if by magic, it sews right up against the teeth, but not through them, because then your zip will get stuck. So I will go and do that, and then we'll see if the zip has worked. Fingers and toes crossed. I start sewing the zip. I just want to show you the little trick with this way of doing it. Right, I've unpicked the seam and I've unzipped the zip. And when you get to the bottom of where the zip's going to be, your zip is longer on the inside. So you can either use tweezers, you can use a pair of, I think they're called semaphores or scimitars. I'll put the right name at the bottom and I'll put a link for them to get them from the place with an A. I have long nails at the moment, so I managed to pull mine through with my nail. But you basically grab hold of the zipper tab and pull it through to the inside, to the end of the tape. That way it's right out of the way and you can sew with ease, which is great when you're doing an invisible zip. Off, I've got my invisible zipper foot on and I'm gonna sew down either seam and then the zip will be finished. Phew! Ta-da! Can you see it? I hope not, because it's an invisible zip. There is the tag at the top. And there's the zip. So yeah, might take a little bit longer than you anticipated to put a zip in. But when you get results like that every time, it's worth taking your time with, going through all those stages, which, to be honest, once you've done it 2 or 3 times, you possibly don't need to do the tacking stitches. You can just use the double-sided tape and that should work fine. I'm just showing you the belt and braces way today. So zip in, and the other good thing with doing it this way There's the zip look hiding inside. And there's the seam perfectly lined up at the waistband as well. Brilliant. So now we can start joining our back to our front. So now we've got that pesky zip done, we can start joining the front to the back. This is the front bodice. I'm not attaching the front skirt on it yet because that would just be too bulky. So we've got to do the neckline and the facing. So we're going to join the front to the back at the shoulder seams, right sides together. Make sure you unfold your little pressed sleeve edge and sew right to the edge of the fabric. And then I'll go through how I'm adjusting the facing, because remember I've shortened the V so that it's not down at my belly button, and I need to adjust the front facing to match, but that's fairly easy. So get the shoulders done, overlock them, and then we'll get the facing in. So let's get the facing done. The top is all sewn together at the shoulder seams, so we've now got a complete neckband that we can face. I've sewn my two front facings together to the point that it tells you to. Now bear in mind these are going to be too long, so I just want to measure against my front neck band down to the point and see how much I need to take off this front facing. I'm going to face up my facing to the front, measure it up to the shoulder. There's the shoulder, there's my facing. That much. Too much. Now bear in mind I need some for a seam allowance, so I'm going to go a little bit past it and then cut it off. Oh, scary if I've done that wrong. I'm going to live to regret it. So now, in theory, my front facing pieces will fit my dress front. So we're going to carry on following the instructions and attach the back facings to the front facings, and then the outer edge all gets overlocked, and then you sew the facing in. So I've pinned the facing only on one side. Down to where the stitch line ends from the centre front facing. All the way round I've matched it up at the shoulder seams and then round to the back. Just turn it round for you. So we've got the zip and we're going to sew the zip top into the facing, and then we've got a little bit left over because we're going to use that to turn over on the inside and finish the top of the zip and the facing that way. So I'm going to sew all the way down to exactly that centre seam on one side. Now the pattern tells you to do it all in one go. Go to the bottom, turn, go back up. I'm not doing it that way. I'm sewing down to that centre seam, and then I'm going to check that it's right on the outside with the centre V. And then when I'm happy, I'm going to pin the other side and do the same thing. And that way, hopefully, I'll get a nice neat point at the bottom of my neckband. Progress report. So I've put the facing in, I've understitched it on the inside. The rest of the facing is going to be hand sewn down so that it stays in place at various points. We'll see once I've pressed it. What else have I done? I've sewn up the hems on the sleeves. Seam there that you have to sew to create your caps, your floaty sleeves. So I've done that. So that's most of the top done apart from hand stitching. So now, obviously, I need a front to my skirt, don't I? So I'm going to follow the pattern instructions, create the front skirt, and add the pockets to the sides. Sew the sides up, and it's just hemming and it's done. So I've no more hints and tips for you. I hope you've found it interesting. I hope it's helped you if you've been head scratching with this pattern. I hope my invisible zip trick has given you the confidence to do an invisible zip. And yeah, I'll pop back with some pics and a little twirl at the end when I finished my gathering dress. What do you think? I'm loving, loving, loving this dress. Love the fluttery sleeves. Love the little cheeky plungy detail. I have raised it and it is still quite revealing, but hey, I'm going with it. So I'm going to give you a little twirl now. And while you're watching this, I will be at the gathering, meeting all my sewing friends for the first time and hopefully having a blast. So I hope you've enjoyed my little hints and tips, and I will see you all on Monday for more makes and plans. Take care. Bye for now.